for the council, as well as elected officials, to kind of be on a more similar page and aware of what everyone's quote-unquote dealing with. And oftentimes the council can be out of the loop and out of touch, and we just wanted to make an effort to be more aware of what elected officials are dealing with, and et cetera, et cetera. So as you can see, our agenda is pretty open-ended, common areas of interest, and so it was a time to, and this being our first one, we could kind of figure out if it's more of a informal sort of just luncheon kind of talk, or if it's more like we want to pass the microphone around and have time to really get down to the nitty-gritty. But I do recognize that everyone is busy with all their stuff that they're working on, so I'm happy to, the aim is to keep this just a short luncheon and move on. So, any burning desires?
Well, I personally, I'd like to thank the council and stuff for putting this together. I've kind of talked to Curtis about it a little bit over time. I think this is a great thing. We don't get to spend a lot of time together as elected officials. We really don't. You know, you guys' agendas are going crazy. We're usually going crazy in about 10 different directions. So, and I you know, at first I kind of laughed and I'm like, oh great, one more meeting. But I like the fact that maybe we keep this a little bit informal. You know, just kind of, hey, these are our perspectives, these are your perspectives, or this or that. But the more the fact that we can spend a little time together as elected officials, I think it benefits not only us, but it benefits the county as well. So, like I say, I just really appreciate the fact that everybody's willing to kind of come together and do this. So whether it's quarterly or whatever, I think it's a great thing.
Great. Chris was just updating me before we kind of started on kind of what's coming up on his personal agenda. Maybe that's just kind of a way to go around. It's just kind of give us an update on kind of what you've been working on, what's coming up, and anything that you need from anyone else at the table.
Sure.
I'm headed up later today to a treasurer's conference in Layton this year, and we're dealing with a few issues as an association. One of them is the legislation proposed by Representative Watkins on potentially allowing citizens to opt their county into having elected officials appointed instead of elected, at least for all of them except for the attorney, because that would have constitutional implications. And our association has come down against that particular piece of legislation. We've drafted a letter that I believe I sent out to everybody, explaining our reasoning on that and why we think there's better ways to address the concerns that Representative Watkins' constituents have raised on that issue. So I know that UAC is in conversation with the representative and other people on that committee as it's studied in the interim. So that's one of the things we'll be discussing for sure.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Why did they want to do that?
Well, Representative Watkins stated in her committee testimony that she had constituents who were upset about certain elected officials in particular counties. There were a couple specific issues that were raised, elected officials who don't have the knowledge or the experience to do their job effectively. And so that was one concern. Another concern was elected officials switching parties before they resign from their seat to control which party gets to fill their seat. And then another concern that was raised was having to do with the difficulty in recruiting people to run for elected office because they have to be up for election every 4 years. So those were some of the reasons.
And why, and what does your letter state? I read it, but I'm not recalling. What were the reasons that your association was against it?
We had 3 or 4 main reasons. The first one was that there's a reason specifically that the treasurer's office is elected. And the overarching reasons were basically that there's a reason it's set up structurally that way because it gives more independence to those elected officials. So, for instance, the state constitution designates that the treasurer and auditor at the state level will be independently elected. And we feel that the same reasons that it should stay that way at the state level are the same reasons for the county level. The auditor is, in charge of overseeing and auditing the departments and should be independent, and the treasurer as well, as far as being the custodian of the actual assets of the county. We think that custodianship should be separated from those who are in charge of spending the money. We think that specifically at the county level, there's an issue with separation of powers, particularly because in most counties you have a 3-person commission who has legislative and executive power, and therefore they don't have, like at the state level, the separation between the governor and the legislature, or at the city level between the mayor and the council. So at the county level, part of the reason there's so many more elected officials than at the city level is because it provides more checks and balances to the combined legislative executive power that's held in most counties.
Chris, this was a
Yeah.
bill that she ran last year too,
Mhm.
and it just didn't get.
It didn't even get out of committee last year,
It
did
did
it?
not make it out of
And
committee.
so she's working on it, wanting to bring it back. Then
It's being studied in the interim. Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
And then the bill. So what's currently in the bill? The citizens can basically create these changes at the ballot box. Do the commissions have the ability to make those changes too?
There's 2 avenues to get it on the ballot. One
Okay.
is commission initiated, the other is voter initiated.
Interesting. Well, I know Carbon County, which is I think where Christine's located, they had some issues a couple years ago with, I think, between the commission and the clerk auditor. My understanding is when that was happening, that was really a driving, reasoning for making those changes because, for whatever reasons they had the commission had the conflict with the clerk auditor. Maybe it wasn't necessarily the commission, but just there was frustration. But seems like I could see pros and cons on both sides, but that's, I don't know.
Me too. Me too.
Obviously pretty drastic change to how things currently operate. Interesting. Do you guys think she's going to get more traction this year with it, or?
I guess that, we're waiting to see, but as far as I know, all of the affiliate associations have come out against it, all the ones I've seen.
It's on we have a meeting tomorrow
Yeah.
with the sheriffs, and it's on the agenda for that tomorrow.
Did UAC oppose that last year?
Yes. They initially came out with a neutral stance, I believe, but then they spoke against it. in the
I would
committee.
imagine so.
So your group's gonna come out against it.
Oh, yeah, hugely gonna come out against it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's,
Sheriffs will always.
yeah, and that's, comes back to the checks and balances thing, and just,
Yeah.
And there's like 29 states where county treasurers are elected, I think. It's not uncommon at all. I think it's the majority of. Maybe that's for the state treasurer, but it's pretty common. But there are some places where it's not, where county level treasurers are not. I don't know about the other elected officials. I don't know how many sheriffs are elected.
I see the pros of it being, you could have interviews and people could give their resumes and, that would be the pro.
The thing about it is if you do something like that, why not do what you do, say the office of sheriff? For me to be sheriff, I have to be a state certified peace officer. I have to be state certified in corrections. I have to be, so I think instead of seeing the interviews in that way, I'd rather see it built in. You have to meet these credentials
Right.
before you run for office. But I hate to see it. I think
That makes
I
it
agree,
right.
there's checks and balances with the elected officials in the county that I think need to stay in place more than now.
The politics of the executive branch of the county will really influence all those departments if they're not elected. The pro of that is if the two departments, like if the executive branch and the department are just failing to work together and the public are hurting because of it, but that's a far less issue than having, the politics of the commission kind of dictating. I mean, you can kind of use the cities as an example for what that would look like, right? I mean, that's essentially the chief of police is appointed,
Right.
the recorder's appointed, and you can see a lot of problems with that, when there's not enough checks and balances in there.
Chris, what would it look like as far as an election or as what Steve brought up is having criteria for people to apply to run? What would that look like? How would we be able to put something like that in place?
Well, I assume that when they turned in their application for candidacy, that's when it'd have to be vetted.
Resumes and
So it would just be advertised? We would have to come up with a resolution?
It depends on whether we would be the ones establishing the criteria or whether the state would write it into law. If it's written into law, then I would assume that the clerk auditor would have to certify the candidacy based on state statute.
Which already happens for the assessor, who has to be an appraiser, for the sheriff, who has to be post-certified,
So
and
it's
for the
already-
attorney, who
we've
has to
got-
pass the bar.
Yeah,
So we already got,
I actually have to submit a letter saying that I meet the requirements to run for office.
that wouldn't be a leap, would it?
be surprising if she got any traction with it again this year, I would think. It's just,
Apparently it comes up every so often. This isn't the first time.
what else we got?
So there's some legislation out there to monkey with the personal property tax, but that's sort of every year. Because I think legislators get a lot of input from business owners about personal property tax. So I don't know where that's going to go. Debbie could probably speak to that more than I can. Those are kind of the big, higher level things that our association is looking at the moment. And here, more at the county level, we're just catching up on stuff during our slow season in the summer, and things are running pretty smoothly for us. I'm looking forward to the budget committee getting back together and starting to work on hopefully what we can do to avoid or make smaller any property tax increase that's needed. But, we still have to see what the budget shapes up as, but based on last year, that's I assume our starting point. So, I don't know how much traction is being made on getting change to TRT going forward, but that seems promising. I saw that the lieutenant governor seemed to make some favorable comments in that direction, and he's going to run for governor, so it seems like maybe there's some good momentum in that direction. I sent out an email about the healthcare sales tax. It still has another 0.5% that could be instituted, and I don't know if there's any interest from those districts or from the council in pursuing that, but those are two avenues we identified last year as being potential other revenue sources other than a property tax increase.
So for the health district at this point, would it be a truth in taxation or would it be a ballot initiative?
I think it has to go to the ballot, but I don't know. I haven't looked up the code.
If we would have set it at the highest when we ran it the first time, we would have the ability to raise it. But I think we'd have to do another ballot. It would have to be another ballot initiative to increase it from where it's at. And have to pass.
Chris, I wanted to thank you for putting plat maps online. That's really nice to be able to access those without having to come down to the county, and it just seems kind of antiquated to have to come down and pay a fee and print a physical copy and get in your car and drive back to the office. It's really nice to be able to have those online.
I will pass that along to Matt. 'Cause
Yeah,
he did more on getting the plat maps up than I did, but
just seems like in the 21st century, you know, it's having things like that that's accessible to people's, you know, really helpful.
and
So,
when Matt gets another person who's actually helping him and not focusing on GIS and stuff, I'm really hoping that we can do an upgrade to the tax information search site. Right now, we have to manually update information. We're hoping to get that automatic from the system, and like plat maps as well. They're only updated every so often, so
how often are they updated?
I don't know the answer to that. Yeah, you have to ask Matt.
We got
Well-
big on the GIS specialist candidacies. They all said, no, we can't afford to move here. So we're starting over. That's where we're at with that.
That's depressing. Thanks, Ruth.
Sorry.
So that brings up a question. I don't want to cut you off, Chris, but
I'm done.
is the county, and this is where I haven't had a chance to look into it, is the county looked at, I know like Duchesne County, when I talked to their sheriff, they actually build duplexes for county housing, for law enforcement, whatever, other employees. The other thing is I just lost my brand new administrative assistant of less than 6 months because of daycare. Has the county ever looked at doing any type of a daycare?
Zachariah and myself, plus we have a small group. I think we're getting together in a couple weeks to look at doing mostly we're starting with below the age of 2, because that seems to be the big
Right.
place, and see if we can find, it looks more promising in the city that there can be a space. But we're looking at grants and looking at ways to do that. Emily Niehaus, myself, from the Multicultural Center, Rihanna. And so I can't remember who else has volunteered to be on that committee, but we will keep you posted, because it's not just your office,
Right.
it's huge,
Well,
it's
and
a
that was,
big deal.
and this was, is she had a medical emergency in her family, that was her daycare, so that kind of pulled her away. And I just think about, what we spend training these people. She was getting up to speed, she was phenomenal, and she comes in one day and goes, I can't work to pay daycare.
Yeah.
The other thing that Zachariah, we don't have a committee, and we talked about once of having a daycare for county city employees,
Right.
where the county pays a portion, and it's kind of on something where, but that's just been a casual conversation between Zachariah and myself, but I do think there's momentum
Yeah,
to
well,
do
even if
something
we
like
could
that.
give it to them at a rate that,
They can afford.
discount it, but they can afford to, maybe afford to keep them around, I think it would benefit the county in the long run.
Plus we'd be providing a really, then we'd be opening up probably places that would have more room.
Right.
So,
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to get to that, that kind of hit me last week when I lost that employee.
it's a
Yeah.
big deal, it's a big deal.
And in terms of the housing, I don't think that there's a lot of traction right now.
Yeah.
But, with the high-density housing overlay that we approved, the 300-unit cap has already all been applied for. So hopefully that puts a dent in some of the things.
Right.
But I think that might be something worth looking at in the future too, because it's not just your department or GIS. Even if there was like a transitional sort of thing where it's like if you are coming to work for the county from outside the county, that there's a place for 6 months or
Yeah,
something
It's like the hospital does.
Yeah.
Do we have people that can run daycare that are certified that can meet state standards?
Oh, if we can find somebody that can do that. Oh, yeah, there's lots of people.
And there's a lot of grants available from like the League of Local Governments. I always mess up their acronym.
And the other problem is that people that work in daycares are paid so minimal. that they'll drop out. So I think if we could do it through a county or through a grant where we could offer the person who's providing the service, required, they all are required
Yeah.
to do a whole bunch of, there's a lot of hoops to jump through. But if we could pay them a wage that would keep them, would be great too.
What kind of insurance is required?
I have like I said, I have no idea.
I mean, it's attainable, and
It's
there
totally
is grants for that. I mean, one of the biggest hurdles is all those things have to operate in a commercial district, and everyone in the commercial zones are going for that highest use.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's the competition. Like, why have a daycare when you could have an overnight rental and just?
The city must have some daycare in residential zoning, because there's daycare business in, they've got a big sign out front, kind of down by Swanee.
There's several daycares.
So there's,
City. And they have to
I don't think
keep,
our land use code prohibits daycares from.
Is that something like a home business sort of thing? I might be wrong then.
So, yeah, we even approved a few months ago, somebody came in and wanted to increase the number. Remember that?
It might be a conditional use, but I'm pretty sure it's allowed in at least some residential zones.
I think they have
Well,
to
you
get
lost
their
that
neighbor's
talking
permission,
point,
right?
That's okay.
For sure, I know.
I can be wrong.
they shot that to hell.
But it's just the cost. I mean, you can't make a living being,
Yeah.
and then the people can't afford to pay them to make it. I mean, it's just this circular issue.
Right.
What else is going on in your department?
Oh, heck. Jail's doing great. Where the state inmates are up, they're asking us to take more all the time. So I think that's a bonus. So I think we're going to continue doing things that way. Communications dispatches back up. A lot of our radio stuff's been replaced. We're still working on some other big issues, which you guys have seen. We're going to be coming to you probably later this year with the new billing structure on what we're going to be looking to bill for dispatch services. So that's still being all put together right now. We've been working with Chris and some other people on putting all that together. Our dispatch runs very effectively. We run a lot cheaper than a lot of other ones. So it's time, people need to pay their fair share. So that's going to be coming. Staff shortages, we're still down a little bit. Seems like it's kind of a constant rotational thing. But we're trying to get some people hired right now and do with that. But it's busy as usual. Search and rescue going through the roof. You guys have seen that. I think we're back. We're still holding that number one slot down pretty hard. Fire, I think we're trying to watch out for fires as much as we can. Just trying to be out and about everywhere we can. It's one thing I have noticed is we're, as people spread out, we're spreading out. We're getting more calls out on the state line. We're getting more calls countywide versus just here locally. So that's probably a big thing. Another big thing that we've started doing that is doing really well for us is we're starting meeting with our Colorado counterparts. We're meeting more with Mason County, with Montrose County, Phillips County, those sheriffs and their agencies. They have been phenomenal and very gracious about, hey, we're with comms, like for years, we've never had radio communications with Mason County because of two different systems. But with some of our upgrades, the way we're going now is we're going to be integrating with them. Montrose County in particular has expressed a lot of interest about entering into an MOU with us about, they're like, sometimes we just jump across the line and help somebody. So it saves us a 3-hour trip and they can just jump and do it. The Mason County's did the same. So we're trying to maybe start working on some MOUs with those agencies just to help each other out. Same with us with them. So things are going good. Things are extremely busy, but we're doing good.
Who else are some of those dispatch users that might?
Right now, the main users, you have us, you have EMS, you have fire, you have BLM, you have Park Service, Forest Service.
But that's mostly local. It's like you're saying, if
Right.
Mesa County bounces off one of ours, or
Yeah, in Mason County, realistically, where you see the uses for that is where we have more and more incidents on the state line.
uh-huh.
In the past, is we'll have to have a Mason County deputy stand up next to one of our deputies because our radios don't talk to each other. So now we'll be able to, in the process of doing this is our radios will now talk to each other. But with us doing these radio upgrades is what we've been working on, it's gonna be expensive. Like right now, our VHF radios are anywhere, I think between 14 and 1800 to get a good radio in a vehicle. So, and handhelds are probably 6 to 800. We're looking to do both now, to do buy each of our guys a handheld and a mobile for their cars is gonna be $9,000. It's gonna be a huge uptaking, but one of the things we're looking at doing is kind of what you've seen EMS and some of them do. I think we're gonna do a lease program, try to do a lease. We'll be talking to you guys about that. So we spread that cost out over 3 or 4 years. And so we don't have to take that. Because right now, we'd be probably, this is purely guesstimation, we'd be looking at $500,000 in radios by the time, because I have to do emergency management, I have to do search and rescue, I have to do all my patrol guys. So it's not just.
So that wasn't included in the hardware?
No, that's a whole nother, this is a whole nother ball of wax. So, just so you guys know, that's something that's gonna be coming down the pipe, but I think we have it in the leasing, what we're looking at leasing and some of the bids that way, that'll cover those costs over a few years. Make it not quite so.
We can probably come up with that out of my travel budget.
I heard your coffee money for the week, we'll cover it.
Yeah, that'll only knock it down by about a third.
Yeah, there you go. The other big thing that came up amongst the sheriffs is that I think ought to come back to the county is HB 163. If you guys haven't seen much of it, it's the state auditor brought the bill down on personal use of county equipment.
Oh, yeah.
We've already adopted a policy.
Okay,
Christina jumped on it.
okay, because that was huge amongst the sheriffs, because the way that bill was portrayed to us is if an employee microwaves their lunch in a county microwave, that's a felony. Unless the county adopts. I mean, and I've talked to Chris about it a little bit. There was a lot of rumors going around both ways, but we just want to make sure that we take care of our employees. So yeah, if there's egregious use, the egregious use needs to be dealt with. But, we just need to make sure that that's taken care of.
If only the state legislature applied the same standards to themselves that they do the poor little children, you know?
Yeah.
It's crazy.
So,
We have had a couple of instances where that was pretty egregious. And at this point, I think we've convinced all parties to shut it down. So, I think we're okay.
Of personal use of county property.
Are you
Yeah.
talking about service
Not-
district or county?
Not county debt property, but special service district property.
It's those service districts, I tell you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's those.
Problems all the time.
So, yeah, I think we've shut them down, so at least in this one.
okay. No good. Like I say, I know it was a big concern to a lot of the sheriffs. That just the way some of the wording in that bill was, they weren't sure.
Yeah.
But it sounds like if we come back and it was taken care of with policy through town, so.
What was the term that Christina used?
It was a kind of a vague ordinance, but it just basically allows, what was the term?
De minimis.
De minimis use of property, which is, vaguely defined, but it would be like checking your personal email every
Right.
once in a while on your laptop
Right.
or whatever.
And that was already allowed, because that was already in our employee handbook on the electronic use policy. It allows for a small amount of personal use.
Right.
So we were already covered on it, looking at Yahoo or something.
But, yeah, I think she intentionally drafted the ordinance to be broadly applicable. And so if it can be determined to be de minimis
Right.
by layman's standards or whatever, then
Okay.
it's okay. But it's not anything that's rigorously defined.
Right.
It just seems like, trying to avoid county commissioners and Cadillacs eating lobster, And
And I think that's the end of it. I think it was equipment. I was trying to think of some of the other stories that we heard is personal laptops being purchased and used, or counter, government laptops being purchased and used for nothing but personal use.
Yeah.
Four-wheelers being purchased and then they were being used for county business.
Yeah, that kind of stuff.
That kind of stuff. I mean, it was pretty evident.
Yeah.
But then there was then we talked to, the one that probably spearheaded it, came to the sheriff's person the most was Johnny Miller.
Yeah.
Johnny said there was a lot of concerns that needed to be looked at.
He's the USIP guy.
Yeah.
He's the which?
USIP,
USIP
the
guy.
ULGT's editor,
Yeah,
intern.
the trust. Any questions for me? I mean, that's, anything you guys are hearing or seeing, I know.
I know that you've been working with Andrea about enforcement up at Sandblast and stuff, and just kind of trying to get some stuff on the books.
There is, that's gonna be a huge asset for us, and I think the other thing about it is that's gonna give us some teeth outside of Sandblast as well. That probably needs to be adopted at a countywide level.
Okay.
Because a lot of times, you know, if the BLM guys are out of town or those kind of things, that's gonna give us a little teeth to maybe deal with some of these issues while those guys are going.
And when you are responding to other BLM areas and stuff, how does all the reimbursement work with that, or is there room for
Right now,
there?
right now is I'd like to see us maybe try to get back into an agreement with the BLM on, because we had one years ago, but quite frankly, the contract that we had, it didn't really pay for itself. And that was for dispatch services provided, and I think the total contract was $10,000. We've been talking with Bill Woody. Matter of fact, if things still go right, I'm supposed to go back to DC in September to maybe to talk about that with the Secretary of Interior and the Secretary of Agriculture on those specific contract issues. If it's still going ever since, whether that was still gonna happen or not. But yeah, I think there's, right now, it's in the county we go, you know, and there's very little reimbursement that way. But it's still, if it's a state crime, we're gonna deal with it no matter what. But, you know, technically, if it's a resource crime, I'd like to see the BLM still continue to handle that, but we're gonna have some things now we need to do.
Okay.
So, I guess to answer the question, there's not much way of reimbursement.
All right. Well, yeah, keep us posted on that, and if there's avenues through our, congressman or whatever.
Right, and we're working, we're working on maybe some funding sources for search and rescues, with some of those kind of things maybe.
Uh-huh.
But it's tentative at best. But we're trying to maybe work on some aircraft costs and some of that kind of stuff. As in it works through the state right now.
Okay.
So,
Well, I know that the BLM's really underhanded. Or not.
That's a good one.
Undermanned, understaffed.
Spoken like a true rural elected official.
I'd
like to second that motion. Like to second that motion.
No, but yeah, short staff. But so we appreciate you filling the gaps.
well, and I can tell you right now, the last 2 or 3 years, it's probably one of the better relationships we've had with them.
Good.
And I contribute that to Lance. Lance is a rock star. And with Rich Lloyd coming in, Rich Lloyd has been good to work with too. We've rebuilt some bridges that have been hurt with water. So it's
That's
been
good to
back
hear.
fast.
Good to hear.
Great.
Yeah.
Anybody else want the hot seat? Look like you're fading over there.
You know, when I was working with the BLM on the D roads, one of the things that came up was trying, at some point, we need to figure out how to get a bridge across the roads for in and trying. I would love that, because right now, it's completely cut off from our side of the river during periods of high water. The only way you get there is from the Colorado side.
We have to get that. That comes back to one of those Mason County things. Matter of fact, we had a fatality out there 6 weeks ago. And Mason County actually went out and helped see until we got there. And we actually, luckily Classic was here, so we actually flew a deputy out to get him faster.
Can it be a drawbridge so that that area doesn't get pounded by tourists? We don't need to- Seriously.
Yeah.
You build a bridge into the triangle, holy
Oh, shit,
cow.
that's gonna
Yeah, especially that close. That's
Dude.
true.
You're already getting people coming in, the call-outs.
Yeah, that's pretty far for them though. That'd make it low hanging fruit for your average.
But there are a lot of people coming in from the other side. There's some, I think there's some campgrounds in there, something like that. RV place. There's getting to be a lot of impact on the Colorado side.
What do you guys need to get over there for like emergency?
Yeah, if we have to go in down, like I said, that fatality, car crashes, that seems to be our big one. Some of that kind of stuff. And right now,
Helicopter
we
fuel.
have to drive, like I say, we have to drive clear out to the monument. Unless we can fly in. And like I said, Classic's been great to fly us in, but they're not around.
Let's park a Jeep or something on the other side and then we'll get you a nice raft. So when you guys need
A zip
Yeah,
line.
and I'll put them in Fruita.
What's
How
that?
about give me 2 deputies and I'll put them in Fruita?
Okay.
Because that's probably.
If that's
down
what
there.
it takes to keep a bridge out of there.
And maybe that's something, if you guys heard, is the BLM, I've heard that the BLM is gonna be building campgrounds out on the state line, out by Westwater and some of that. Have you guys catching any wind of that?
No, but I just came from a trail mix meeting where we were getting an update on the Klondike campgrounds, but I can talk to Katie about that.
Yeah, no, I met Tim Mansdale last time I had him on the phone.
I wonder if that's the same district office or if that's an office out of.
I think it'd be this district office, because isn't the boundary the state line?
I know they go out to Westwater.
Because this
so
would be
they're
the
going,
Utah side that these campgrounds are gonna go in.
Huh. And what they're going in at Westwater, like down by the river?
So the area I got was the state line area, so whatever.
upstream of the Westwater put in, like that Rabbit Valley area.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
been a lot of, there's a lot of big zone where a lot of people are playing.
Yeah.
And there's dispersed camping there that's undeveloped. That's
We're seeing a lot of camping out in that area. We were out there yesterday, there's campers out there.
Huh.
Just off the top of my head, I wondered if we couldn't pursue an idea of getting the Utah Guard engineer company. They are a bridge company. See if we can get them to build us a bridge across the Dolores for their annual training. I know that they've done projects for Fern City, down in Fern City Park. They've done other projects in other locations for their annual training. And I wondered if we couldn't get them to do something for that.
I would rather see an interlocal agreement or something of that nature where perhaps Mesa County can handle it and then let us know before we build a bridge, just because building a bridge is another thing we have to maintain, our road department. Plus, it's another, just giving more access to areas that now are, a little more pristine than some of the areas. I'd like to protect them as long as possible. A bridge would just make it easier.
I know that Bill Jackson would like to see.
That's not a discussion I've ever had. I don't know.
I did. We had a discussion going on, and he would really like a bridge.
Yeah, I think we're gonna continue to see uses go up. Like I say, we're seeing just increased use of foot cliffs. There's as people, people trying to get away from people are just moving further out.
Yeah.
So,
If Little County is successful with upgrading that East Canyon Road, it crosses a lot of private property and civil, and I think you're going to see a lot of development on that.
well, and if that road ever happens, I think we ought to really relook at, before we talked about getting a piece of sit in the ground up there, just to base operations out of, where it's lock equipment up. And Civil was willing to work with us on that. I think we really need to look at that again. Because not only did that benefit me being able to maybe store some equipment up there, maybe a radio tower if we need to, but also snowplows to reload if Bill needs them or the state needs them. It's it's a good central place right on those two county lines for us to rehub a bunch of stuff out of.
You know, I ran into, I forget her name, that deals with like the permitting at the BLM. You might know Greg, the lady that's the kind of the permitting person at the BLM, the local field office. Anyways, I bumped into her the other day and just asked her if they had heard from the Uintah County Transportation District or the 7 county guys, and she had said no, and that their application was incomplete. And she had kind of let them know, hey, your application's incomplete. And
I know that they're getting a lot of money from this CIB to develop a rail line into the basin, and that may be where all their impetus is going right now.
yeah, I just, I mean, after they came in and talked to us, I mean, I didn't think anybody really came down hard on them or patted them on the back either. It was just kind of a, kind of a general discussion and ideas, but it's just been quiet ever since, so I don't know.
That was the 7 county application.
Yeah, there hasn't been any, I mean, there hasn't been any, my understanding is they haven't really reached out to anybody on that, including the BLM at this point, so, yeah, they're probably focused on their big rail project, but, so I guess we're just nowhere with that.
Like I say, I know Settler, we'd worked with them, they'd actually told us we had a piece of ground picked out and everything else. So
Really?
it's, I don't think it'd take much to make that happen if we decide we need to. So,
What do you got, Chris?
Oh, a lot, but probably the most important thing to talk about is I'm just about ready to probably send out emails countywide soliciting input on a mid-year budget amendment. We've already had quite a few sizable budget amendments that the council's approved that probably really should have required a public hearing. And so we need to make sure we square that all the way. And just to give a head start also on getting more refined for the actual budget season, which is coming up fast. But I do expect that it's going to be a difficult budget season because I think expenses are going up a lot. We've seen with our needs assessment that there's quite a lot of need for new positions and new space, and trying to tackle all that in association with all the other things we've got going on. It's going to be challenging, so that's going to be it's probably going to be one of the tougher budget seasons coming up, I think, in terms of trying to figure out how to meet our needs and our resources really in terms of growth. The county's cost of doing business goes up every year, but the growth that we're seeing in revenue is starting to decline, TRT especially. And so we've always kind of counted on that growth, either by increasing some kind of sales and use tax or just on the growth from sales and use tax to meet our growth needs. But now that we don't really have a lot of avenues to increase sales and use taxes, or and also seeing reductions in the growth rate in those sales and use taxes, it's going to be more difficult moving into the future. So prepare yourselves, I guess, for that.
When are you hoping to open the budget again? This year's amendments?
I was hoping to do it, to get it on the agenda for this month, but I'm a little delayed. So I'm not sure. But I've got the software all set up again so that department heads and elected officials can go into the budgeting software and mark down their requested budget amendment. I'm hoping as much as possible that we'll be able to, the bottom line is close to the same as we can, but there's already been some budget amendments that are going to push it over, which means we're going to have to draw off of our fund balance even more than we already planned to. And so, and I'm still closing out 2018, working with the auditors on that, but I mean, we're going to come out in the black on 2018, but it's not anywhere near as, we haven't done as well as we have in the past with regard to putting money into the fund balance. So I had to make a pretty major adjustment in the transfer from TRT to the general fund just because TRT came in so much less than what we had predicted. So that's going to affect, you know, the balance that we have to work with. I mean, it's still going to be fairly healthy, but it's not much in comparison to our needs in the long run. So, starting to think about that, but I'm also running this, you know, running the city's election right now, and it's the end of the state and federal fiscal year, and so I've got a bazillion grants that I'm trying to close out and reapply for at the same time. So, super busy with all that stuff. Down also my two best staffers right now. So, well, Renee actually transferred to HR, so she's gone from my office, and Janet's out on leave for knee surgery. So, it's very busy over there right now. If anybody wants to come volunteer some time.
Yeah, we got places.
Oh yeah, and
People
also
volunteer, we got places.
coordinating the airstrike out of the wetlands.
Ideally, when would you like to start the 2020 budget, or with the advisory?
At least by September for sure. Maybe even earlier like we did last year.
Last year we started in April. Killing.
But it's coming up fast.
Is there potential replacements to fill this big, or
The one, I'll be interviewing next week. But, you know, it's Moab, so there, you know, if you can't really expect that you're going to find somebody that's already qualified to do the job. You know you're going to have to train somebody. And there's no hope, you know, and there's generally no hope of bringing anybody in. Not even for the higher level positions. It's the same everywhere. It's a tough job market. So, but you know, I think that we've done considerably better since we did the salary adjustment. Don't you think, Steve?
Yeah.
Made a lot of.
It's made a huge difference.
Yeah. And so that was necessary for sure, but it's still a very competitive job market. But I would like to, you know, bring some training in. It might be expensive, but I think it's probably pretty necessary to have some people come down and camp out for a while and do some training both in my office and the HR director. So we've been discussing that. That might be something that I ask for, is to increase my training budget so that we can get a little more modernized in terms of how we're using software and doing accounting and whatnot.
Yeah, modernization specifically save us in the long runs.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and I've been, you know, in all of my staff's spare time, just scanning paper documents and trying to get everything, you know, easier to look up, electronically indexed, so it's not, you know, just all old school paper files. So that's something we're slowly working on, and having somebody build an index of the ordinances, which I think we need to do for the work that Christina and Steve's working on, because they need to recodify their ordinances if they're going to build or enable themselves to cooperatively manage law enforcement outside of private property.
Yep. Yeah, because that's going to be huge for us, for our guys to be able to pull all that stuff up. Yeah, and then if you get bored, we're starting to try to scan all the old Joe bookings in from the 20s and 30s all the way up.
Oh, wow.
That might be kind of
So
interesting.
it actually is kind of interesting. Every now and again you get a file and go, no way. But yeah, so we're trying to scan all those. We're actually working with state archives to start working on that.
Building
entertaining.
official has done all their scans of building, all the building permits, years and years back.
That's not as fun as the booking.
No.
Should include that.
Boxes that are missing.
Yeah, there you go.
Not all.
There's actually some good ones. There's.
I would imagine.
I just wanted to fill you guys in
Yeah.
before we run out of time what I'm doing, and so to go along with the tax plats, we're actually kind of following Salt Lake County's guide. We're creating township plats maps that will probably be filed at the county recorder's office. That will have all the section corner ties actually on a map, so that they can go and they'll have a reference to left coordinates for those. So that'll really help with the tax maps, with the recorder's office and everything. Right now we're going through about a stack that thick of paper, trying to just type in the coordinates into Excel sheet so we can start working on the maps. And then another thing, this is an interesting one, but I was going to have it on an agenda item for county council hopefully coming up. I need to get some documents and maps and prepared. I'm trying to replat the north side of Thompson. So I've got some interest with some clients own quite a bit. So basically I'm going to create we got to get, everybody has to sign it that owns property, and we're basically creating a new township plat that fixes everything, and I'll have to have everybody's that owns property in that signatures. So it's going to have to go through like planning and zoning department, county road department. You guys, the county council will have to be involved because I'll have to vacate portions of roads that are where houses are built in the middle of roads right now.
Keep the sheriff close.
Yeah, and I think this is good for
I
the
got to call
sheriff.
some extra guys that day.
Well, we were looking at, I don't know how the assessor's office and everybody's taxing that area, because
Yeah.
it's just a mess. The roads aren't even named right. I think one of the roads is named different on Google Maps, so that's probably causing a problem for the fire district and everything, so it's kind of something I'm working on, because I have had interest in other people in that area wanting me to try to survey their property. Well, I'm like, well, your house is in the middle of the road, so kind of need to get cleaned up. So I'm working with these people, and they have, this family has some, knows everybody. So it's interesting, but I have surveyed the whole north side and measured what I could for fences, and kind of got it figured out. I have to move the Thompson Town site needs to move about 80 feet north from, this is north of the railroad, this south of the railroad's fine. 8 feet north and about 25 feet to the west, it starts matching where people have been occupying. But there's some roads that aren't, county roads that aren't in a dedicated right-of-way, and then other right-of-ways that have houses, like I said, and being occupied by people and different things, so that's what I plan to do that with more maps to kind of let the public know and stuff, and talk with Zachariah and Bill Jackson and everybody before I try to get on the agenda to bring it before you guys. I basically need to go through everybody and make sure everybody's on board, because they're all going to have to sign this plat. And the reason I'm doing this as a county thing is just because it's, like I said, all the reasons. I don't think I'll get it done for one person without all these signatures, and some people aren't going to pay for it. And it involves a lot of its roads.
I think especially as we're modernizing, it's definitely worth having that as clean as possible.
Well, and that's the thing, Thompson's got a lot of stuff going on as Moab gets busier. There's more interest out there to do stuff, because it is somewhat close proximity. So there's been a lot of stuff going on at Thompson, so I think it's time we get it fixed.
Yes, I think that's a great idea, because I can see you're already doing some improvements.
Yeah, we definitely want to keep those right-of-ways.
So it is a thing. I've already tried fixing one little issue area out in Thompson on my private business, and couldn't get everybody to agree on it. So it'll be quite a thing, because there is actually currently three they're 20 Thompson Town side's 25 feet wide lots. Somebody owns 3 of them, and the county road goes to the middle of them. So I don't know if they've just bought that not knowing where it was or what, but their whole property is useless. So kind of have to figure that one out for them. But the way it fits, so we can move a bunch of stuff around and try to make it fair for everybody. But it's gonna take some time. But yeah, I'm started on that. Trying to figure it out, but yeah, it should be in the next couple months. I'll at least get it on the county agenda.
Great.
So.
Good, I'm glad to see somebody going to try to fix that mess. Because, yeah, I've had the recorder run a number of plat maps off with satellite overview on them, and nothing matched up. And yeah, like you said, people are living, got their house in the middle of where there's supposed to be a right of way, and it's just a mess.
Mm-hmm.
So I know exactly what you're talking about. I didn't see any way to fix it without being losers and winners. You know, there was going to be some people come out really well, and there was going to be a lot of people that weren't going to. We're going to end up with
it might be, but a lot of the properties overlap each other, so
yeah.
So I mean, they already have less than what they're probably paying taxes for. That's why I said I don't know how the taxes are going on.
I couldn't understand that either.
There is kind of a big just vacant area because, like I said, everything's 80 feet north, so there's a portion or 80 feet of no man's land if you actually move it up to where they're supposed to be. But then some people lose property to the north when you move it, so. Yeah, but what they have on the ground, it's not going to change pretty much. It's just what's on paper. So.
Did you ever get all the monuments fixed? You said that when you first took the job, that you went around and you did all the county monuments, and you found a lot of them were all over the place.
Well, that's what we're trying to go through still with the
trying to get
the tie sheets. So for monuments, I've been on top. So the new sewer plant destroyed a monument, so we reset that. That was actually last year, with the city. 100 West project destroyed monuments, so it's made sure those are all reset. And then the Wyndham Timeshare Resorts destroyed a monument, so I will actually on that project will make sure it's reset when the landscaping's done. So keeping track of ones that are getting destroyed. So we've done 2 of those. We've also surveyed, remarked some corners for a citizen that was knocked out 25 years ago from the road department. He's been waiting 25 years for a county surveyor to reset them, I guess. So,
wow.
So that's been done. But yeah, we're trying to get we've tried to think a lot about how we're doing this, and we finally went with the like I said, the Salt Lake County plat map. So you have a stack this thick of recorded 8.5 by 11 documents of where the past county surveyors and different people have done these, we call them tie sheets to section corners that have coordinates on them. But you have to sift through all those, and so we're trying to make those on a map and then be able to reference them, so they technically don't even need to look at those because the map will have a list of coordinates on like the left side of it, and they'll be broken down by the townships, which may be smaller around Moab and stuff. We might have to break smaller maps down. But we're trying to do, Tim Keogh did a thing of the Moab townsite plat, so I'm trying to tie that into it too. Because there's monuments in all the center lines of a lot of the roads too.
Okay.
It's part of it that get knocked out, like 100 West with some of those, so.
Okay, thank you.
Deb, any updates?
Just getting ready for BOE and reappraisal of Spanish Valley this year, so that'll be interesting. I've had a lot of feedback from the realtors. Can you use your... Worried about what if we do this zone change on the highway commercial, what it's going to do to their property values. They want me to give them a number of what it's going to lower their values. I said I wish I had that crystal ball, but I've had some feedback on that, so that'll be interesting to see how that comes out.
How does that get determined? Is it just market value, or is there
Yeah, potentially. Your market value could change. one realtor that came to me, he gave me the scenario is, so right now I can build a motel on there. I can make $20,000 a month, where I build a office complex where I make $500 a month out of renting offices. He said, so that's got to affect your value. So we go by the sales, and if the sales start dropping and lowering, then we.
So it's just by the sales.
Mhm.
Okay.
So then we.
Other-
Yep. Nope. We go off what the market's doing, and if it's dropping, then we have to drop, which affects taxes. So. But I think we'll have an increase in Spanish Valley a little bit this year. We're kind of low out there, so some of that'll be coming up in the residential, but I don't know what's going to happen with the commercial. So.
Anything else while we're all together?
One other thing before I forget. Next March, we're in planning right now with Team Rubicon and Steve Swift out of the arena, where Team Rubicon will be holding a national training here next year on their Sawyer class, all that we've done with them. They're going to do, sounds like they're going to try to do equipment, but it's also going to work for us as to what it would take to turn the arena into a mass casualty center or a mass evacuation center. So you guys, just so you're going to probably start hearing some things about it, it's in the pre-planning right now. But we've had such a good relationship with them the last 2 years they've been here, or the year since the fire, that they want to do that national training here. So that's going to be a big thing. So just so you guys will start hearing about it.
I got a question, while we're all here. There's been some rumblings in UAC. Utah County has signaled their intention to pull out of UAC. And Salt Lake County has threatened to do that before, and they've always said if one of them goes, they both go, because they work so closely in those projects. And then, conventional thought says that then Weber County will go because they're on the other end of Salt Lake County, and then Davis County, which they refer to as the Big Four counties, who pay the majority of the dues. And so one of the things that was really being circulated and discussed at last year's convention was the urban counties wanted weighted voting when it come to management of UAC within the board of directors. So they say, if we're going to pay a disproportionate percentage of the dues, we want, basically control of the organization. And there was never any, consensus reached on that, and without knowing the specifics, it seems like the urban counties are starting to signal that they're going to pull out of UAC. And so there's a lot of county folks having these, I don't know if you've heard of this, but this is just recent, a lot of county folks kind of having that conversation because in the past, the urban counties, they go outside of UAC for lobbying and services, and they have the budgets to do so. But a lot of the rural counties, they really, rely on a lot of those services that UAC provides because we've got limited resources. And so, without speaking for them, it kind of sounds like they're saying, look, if we're going to be floating the cost of this organization, we want to be able to make it useful and in alignment with our agendas and goals. And so they're already, going outside of that to hire lobbyists to pursue these things they want to pursue. So it kind of brings up this question is like, what's going to happen now if the counties decide, whatever counties decide to stay in UAC, if those urban counties do pull out, they're going to essentially, sounds like, give up control of the organization through this weighted voting system to the urban counties. Or if the urban counties do withdraw, our dues will go up significantly to cover that gap, or UAC's going to have to cut costs. And so I know something that I know a lot of counties have struggled with is would they be better off to either go outside of UAC for lobbying or hire lobbyists in addition to UAC to know that that lobbyist is is not balancing all these other interests and this board of directors that may have a different opinion, than what the county does. And, I would imagine that's something that Grand County is going to have to, evaluate relatively soon as this thing unfolds. And I think, something that I know the Grand County Council, like we've discussed, is I think it's probably more cut and dry for us if we were to pull out a UAC to go out and find lobbyists and pursue those issues independently from UAC. And if we have the need to coordinate and communicate with other county commissioners or council members, we can pick up the phone and do that. The affiliate groups, the elected officials, that are not in the policy-making role, it seems like that those events and that structure to sit you guys down with your counterparts from other counties and have discussions on issues and stuff. The council does that also, but it just seems a little bit more cut and dry for us if we went another direction. I don't think it would bother us as much, and wanted to hear from you all what your thoughts were on that, because I've talked to Steve about it before, and it seems like the Sheriff's Association kind of put some distance between you guys and between UAC.
We did.
Yeah. How did that work, and what?
Well, at the point there was a lot of contention with the executive director. On the retirement bills, we felt like there were some dealings that weren't quite right, and there was actually some comments made to a couple of the sheriffs going, well, why do we listen to you? You don't pay our salaries. But it's kind of a double-edged sword. We pulled away from them because we felt like they weren't representing us at all, or barely. And I don't know if that's getting what you want, but the one thing I do know is the more the counties stay together or work together, the better off we're going to be. I mean, but I think it needs to be an equal voice for an equal thing, because when me as the sheriff from Grand County walks up on the hill, I don't know how much weight or clout I carry, but when the 29 of us walk up there, we're paid attention to. And I think that's the same. I think we can all relate to that. So I think UAC has a role, but I do think that was a lot of what they weren't. They were representing. We felt like urban Utah versus rural Utah.
Well,
I don't know if I'm getting to what you want or what.
Yes, Salt Lake County threatened to pull out a UAC at the convention this year, and my shenanigans and were kind of destabilized the status quo. But I think it was a good thing. It needed to shake up. But what we saw was Salt Lake County says, well, we're threatening to pull out, and the whole organization mobilizes to take care of them because they're the biggest dues payer. And like even that in itself was kind of problematic, because there's a lot of counties that have issues that don't get that kind of attention. And I guess what I want to say is, what I propose is if we want equal footing with the urban counties, and we're really going to buy into UAC, we're going to have to pay more.
Oh yeah.
Because you can't have someone footing the bill and then complaining that they have all the say. I mean, that doesn't work in any organizational structure anywhere with shareholders. But they're going the opposite direction, and is my understanding of the discussions now. They are going to give them the votes, and they are going to give them the say. And so if these urban counties are going to stay in UAC, so it's going, that's only going to lead to trouble. But then Grand County, we're not the same. We don't have the same views as a lot of rural counties. So if it goes into a direction of an urban and a rural association, which a lot of states do that, then Grand County is going to probably run into trouble there, because they're not going to see eye to eye with all the other rural counties on like public lands issues. And so I think some proactive discussion needs to happen, and I don't want to see the council head off in one direction, where you guys feel like you're not being heard, but also understand that this is a very complicated situation,
Well, and I agree, and I think one of the other sheriffs brought up a comment that I think is very true, is the council is who pays the dues, no matter what county. Yeah. My personal opinion is, and a lot of the other sheriffs is that needs to be changed. So, if the council, you have a due fee, a fee schedule you pay. If I want to be a member of UAC, there's a fee schedule I pay. And then that way, that they kind of maybe felt like everybody had a little more skin in the game, to where UAC had to pay attention to all the elected officials versus just the council or the commissions.
Yeah.
That was, I know that was a big topic at one of the sheriff's meetings.
Maybe, Mr. Chairman, a deliverable would be if we could kind of come up with a proposal that reflects kind of how we feel a step forward would be, and send it to them and say, hey, if these things are being discussed, this is where we stand. You know, otherwise they're going to come up with some solution that we're probably most likely not going to be in support of, I wouldn't think, because if we lose the board of directors runs UAC, they set the budget, they do the hiring and firing, and if you lose all control of the organization to those 4 urban counties, I wouldn't imagine that's going to work. So.
Is that something you think we have together in like a week, or is that further out? I don't know what kind of schedule UAC is, how soon these decisions are coming up. But.
Probably not super urgent, but probably something we should, within the next 2 months, maybe at maximum, try to have a letter out. I think it's worthwhile.
I think so too. I think that their big response whenever we're complaining or whining about things is that it's a participation factor. And so.
And then when you go up to participate, they don't pay any attention to you.
Well, that's why we gotta, do our bit of participation.
Yeah.
So that we can say, hey, we're participating. So.
UAC needs a house in the Senate. This
Put
probably
it in the letter. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, instead of a board, just yeah.
Big states, little states, and this issue's been dealt with before somewhere. So.
Well, I think, just to end that note, I'm encouraging, the council to consider hiring our own lobbyists, like on a per issue basis anyways, because having seen it, that works a lot better than relying on the UAC. I mean, UAC can do good things, they can do bad things, but
they can pivot in an instant.
Yeah.
It's like you think you're on board with them, and then suddenly it's a change.
Oh yeah, been part of that.
Yeah. We'll just have our budget guy figure all that.
When he's done with the mosquitoes.
He's over there trying to work.
After
he's
the
answering
airstrike.
emails and like, I thought we were gonna be done by now.
Okay.
All right. Any other burning desires?
Thank you again.
Yeah.
This was great.
Thank you
That
guys.
was
How
awesome.
often, Steve, do you think we should meet quarterly?
I think quarterly.
We're all
I mean,
set up quarterly.
I was gonna say,
Okay.
because everybody, it ain't like we ain't got meetings.
Yeah.
So,
And obviously, if anything happens in the meantime or comes up,
Yeah.
Wait for 3.
No, it's, we're available. Great. All right. So with that, it's 1:22, and I would adjourn this special meeting of county elected officials.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you guys.
that's it. So, when did all that come to pass?
I just heard about it last week.
I was gonna say, I've been out of pocket for a little while.